Before the rings, before the banners, before he became the face of excellence itself, before his name became synonymous with greatness, before Jordan meant more than just a surname, there was a boy in Wilmington, North Carolina. Tall, skinny, hungry to prove himself, but not yet unshakable. Not yet the man who would redefine what it meant to be clutch. Not yet the legend who would make grown men tremble with a single stare. Picture this: a 15-year-old sophomore standing in front of a bulletin board at Emsley A. Laney High School. His eyes scan the list of names. Once, twice, 3 times. His name isn't there on the varsity roster. Instead, he sees Leroy Smith, a friend, a teammate, someone taller, but not necessarily more skilled, listed for the final varsity spot. Michael Jeffrey Jordan, the kid who lived and breathed basketball, who dreamed of nothing but hoops, was being sent to the junior varsity team. Now, this wasn't uncommon. Sophomores rarely made varsity. The coaches had a choice between 2 players for the last spot, and they chose the taller one. It was basketball logic, not a judgment on his ability. But logic didn't matter to a 15-year-old's wounded pride. The humiliation burned like acid in his chest. He felt his throat tighten, his eyes well up, his hands shake. He cried, but not where anyone could see. He ran to his car, locked the doors, and broke down completely. In that moment, the future greatest player of all time felt like he'd been declared not good enough. But here's what separates legends from everyone else. What breaks most people forges them. When he came back the next day, he wasn't louder, he wasn't more emotional. He wasn't begging the coach for another chance or making excuses about politics or favoritism. He was different, more focused, colder, calmer, sharper. Like someone had taken all that raw emotion and crystallized it into something harder than diamond. See, most people think greatness comes from talent. Others believe it's about confidence or natural ability. Some say it's luck or connections or being in the right place at the right time. But real greatness, the kind that bends the laws of reality, that makes the impossible look inevitable, that turns ordinary humans into legends, comes from something deeper, something rarer, something most people never develop: self-control. The ability to remain centered while the world tries to throw you off balance. The power to transform pain into precision. The discipline to let results speak louder than words. The mastery to turn your greatest weakness into your most devastating weapon. This is the story of how a kid who once let his emotions break him learned to master them completely and became the most composed killer the court has ever seen. This is the principle of self-control, exactly as Napoleon Hill described it in his timeless work, The Law of Success. This is the story of Michael Jordan. And by the end of this video, you'll understand how to develop a mind so steady, so focused, so emotionally untouchable that even when chaos surrounds you, even when everyone else is losing their heads, even when the pressure could crush steel, you remain unshaken. You'll discover the secret that transformed a crying teenager into the most mentally dominant athlete in history.
Michael Jeffrey Jordan was born on February 17, 1963, in Brooklyn, New York. But he was raised in Wilmington, North Carolina, in a household where discipline wasn't just encouraged, it was demanded. His father, James Jordan Sr., was a man of few words but deep principles. He worked at General Electric, came home every day at the same time, and believed that respect was earned through consistency, not volume. He was strict but loving, demanding but fair. His mother, Dolores, was the spiritual backbone of the family. Disciplined in her faith, sharp in her intellect, and absolutely uncompromising when it came to her children's character. She didn't just raise them, she forged them. They raised Michael on 3 unshakable values: work ethic, humility, and restraint. But young Mike had one fundamental problem that would have destroyed a lesser spirit. He felt everything, intensely, completely, overwhelmingly. If he lost a pickup game at the local park, he'd cry for hours in his room. If someone beat him in a foot race at school, he'd sulk for days, replaying every step. If a teacher criticized his work, he'd take it so personally that he couldn't sleep. This wasn't just competitiveness. This was something deeper, something that consumed him from the inside. He hated losing. Not like most kids hate losing, where they're disappointed for a few minutes and then move on to video games or hanging with friends. Michael took every loss, every defeat, every moment where he wasn't the best as a personal attack on his very identity. It consumed him, ate at him, drove him to the edge of emotional breakdown regularly. His high school coach, Clifton "Pop" Herring, later recalled, "Michael was talented, sure, but early on he was also emotionally fragile. When things didn't go his way, you could see it destroy him. I wasn't sure he had the mental makeup to handle real pressure." The JV assignment in his sophomore year was the turning point. That night, alone in his bedroom, with his parents downstairs watching TV and his siblings doing homework, Michael Jordan sobbed like his world had ended. Not because he wasn't good enough. Deep down, he knew he could play with anyone. But because someone else's height and seniority had been chosen over his heart and skill. It wasn't about basketball ability. It was about fitting a conventional mold. And Michael Jordan had never fit conventional molds. But when he came back to practice the next day, as the star of the junior varsity team, something had fundamentally shifted inside him. He didn't scream at the coach. He didn't complain to his parents. He didn't make excuses or point fingers or talk about how unfair life was. He just worked, every single day. But it wasn't just any kind of work. This was different, methodical, calculated, cold. He arrived at the gym before anyone else. He stayed after everyone left. He practiced shots that others thought were impossible. He conditioned his body like he was preparing for war. Jordan later said, "I knew I never wanted to feel that way again, that helplessness, that lack of control. And I decided I'll outwork everyone. But I'll do it quietly. I'll let my game be louder than my mouth could ever be." Most people think Jordan was always confident, always in control, always the alpha dog who dominated through sheer force of personality. But that's the myth. The truth is far more powerful. Early on, his emotions controlled him completely. He had to train himself, through failure, through pain, through humiliation, to respond with calculation instead of reaction. He had to learn that emotional control wasn't about suppressing feelings. It was about channeling them, directing them, using them as fuel instead of letting them burn him alive. The transformation didn't happen overnight. Throughout his junior year, there were still moments where the old Michael would surface. A bad call would make him snap. A tough loss would send him into a spiral. But each time, he recovered faster. Each time he learned to process the emotion without being enslaved by it. And slowly, methodically, the fire inside him didn't go out. It refined itself, purified itself, transformed itself into something far more terrifying than rage: cold precision. By his senior year, opposing players and coaches began to notice something unsettling about this Jordan kid. He didn't celebrate when he scored. He didn't trash talk when he dominated. He didn't show emotion when refs made bad calls. He just played. with a focus so intense it was almost supernatural. One opponent later described it, "It was like playing against a machine that happened to look like a teenager, but there was nothing teenager about the way he approached the game. It was scary." The boy who once cried over losses had transformed into someone who used losses as data, information, to be processed, analyzed, and used to ensure it never happened again. This wasn't just athletic development. This was the birth of a philosophy that would carry him to heights no basketball player had ever reached. The philosophy of emotional mastery.
In his masterpiece, The Law of Success, written decades before Michael Jordan was even born, Napoleon Hill identified 17 principles that separate achievers from dreamers. But he called one principle the foundation of all others: self-control. Hill called it the balance wheel of the mind, the force that keeps all other powers in perfect harmony. He wrote, "Without self-control, all other principles collapse under pressure. Knowledge becomes arrogance. Ambition becomes recklessness. Desire becomes destructive obsession. Confidence becomes dangerous overconfidence." Hill studied the most successful people of his era: Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Theodore Roosevelt. And he discovered that what separated them wasn't just intelligence or opportunity or even work ethic. It was their ability to remain calm, focused, and strategic when everyone else was losing their minds. Self-control, according to Hill, isn't about being passive or emotionless. It's not about becoming a robot or suppressing your humanity. It's about being deliberate, intentional, strategic. It's the power to choose when to act, how to act, or whether to act at all. It's the discipline to pause between feeling and action. It's the wisdom to respond rather than react. Hill wrote, "The man who cannot or does not control himself will never control others, and the man who cannot control others will never control circumstances, and the man who cannot control circumstances will never control his destiny." Michael Jordan embodied this truth more completely than perhaps any athlete in history. He didn't react to trash talk. He collected it like intelligence and used it later. He didn't respond to dirty plays with retaliation. He responded with points. He didn't let officials' bad calls affect his focus. He treated them as additional challenges to overcome. His silence became more intimidating than any trash talk could ever be. His composure under pressure became his signature weapon. His ability to elevate his game when stakes were highest became legendary. Think about some of the most pressure-packed moments in basketball history. The flu game, 1997 NBA Finals Game 5 against the Utah Jazz. Jordan was so sick he could barely stand during warm-ups. Food poisoning had left him dehydrated, dizzy, and physically depleted. Team doctors suggested he sit out. Most players would have used this as an excuse, a perfectly valid reason to have an off night or maybe not play at all. He played 44 minutes, scored 38 points, grabbed 7 rebounds, had 5 assists, hit the game-winning three-pointer with 25 seconds left. And then, in an image that perfectly captures his philosophy, he collapsed into Scottie Pippen's arms, too exhausted to even celebrate. Not because he felt good, but because he had trained his mind to override his body completely. Because the principle of self-control says, you do not obey emotion. Emotion obeys you. You do not surrender to circumstances. You rise above them. You do not react to pressure. You transform pressure into performance.
Hill taught that the greatest achievers master 3 specific skills with emotion. 1. They recognize it early. Before emotion hijacks their judgment, they identify exactly what they're feeling and why. 2. They pause before reacting. They create space between the stimulus and their response, allowing logic to catch up with emotion. 3. They redirect emotion toward their purpose. Instead of being victims of their feelings, they become masters of them. Jordan was a virtuoso of all 3 skills. When opponents tried to provoke him, and they tried constantly, he wouldn't explode publicly. He wouldn't get technical fouls or throw punches or engage in screaming matches. He would take the insult, process it, internalize it, and file it under "to be settled later." And when he settled it, he didn't raise his voice. He raised the scoreboard. There's a famous story from his rookie year. Veteran player Reggie Theus was guarding him during a practice scrimmage. Theus was talking trash, trying to welcome the rookie to the league with some psychological warfare. "Hey, Rook, you're not in college anymore. This is the big leagues. You better toughen up or you're going home." Jordan said nothing, didn't respond, didn't engage. Instead, he scored on Theus 7 consecutive times, 7 different ways, with increasing creativity and precision each time. After the 7th bucket, as Jordan was jogging back on defense, Theus called timeout and approached him. Okay, I get it. We're cool." Jordan just nodded. Still no words, no celebration, no trash talk in return. That's power. Not from rage, from restraint. Not from reaction, from precision. Not from emotion, from control. Hill understood that this kind of self-mastery is what creates legends. In his research, he found that temporary success can come from talent or luck, but sustained extraordinary achievement, the kind that changes industries and inspires generations, requires something more. It requires the ability to remain excellent when excellence is hardest, to perform when performance matters most, to stay calm when everyone else is in chaos. Jordan didn't just play basketball. He mastered the mental game that basketball represents, the constant battle between pressure and poise, between emotion and execution, between what you feel and what you do. And in mastering that battle, he didn't just become the greatest player of all time. He became a living example of Napoleon Hill's most powerful principle, the principle that separates legends from everyone else.
In the NBA, everyone is physically gifted. Everyone is fast, strong, and skilled. The difference between good and great, between great and legendary, is psychological. And no one mastered psychological warfare like Michael Jordan. But here's what made him different from other trash talkers or mental game players. Jordan's psychological dominance came from restraint, not aggression, from silence, not noise, from results, not rhetoric. Early in his career, Reggie Miller tried to establish himself by going at the young phenom. During Jordan's 2nd season, Miller was talking throughout an entire game, trying to get under his skin, trying to make him lose focus. Jordan dropped 44 points without saying a word. After the game, as they shook hands, Jordan finally spoke. "Don't ever talk trash to Black Jesus." But he said it without raising his voice. No smile, no celebration, no emotion at all. Just a statement of fact, like mentioning the weather. That's power, true psychological dominance. Miller later said in interviews, the way he said it, it wasn't threatening. It was scarier than threatening. It was just true. Like he was telling me something I should have already known. Steve Kerr, his own teammate, found out firsthand about Jordan's standards during a 1995 practice.
Kerr thought Jordan was being too demanding with a younger player and spoke up about it. Jordan, who had been dealing with stress from his baseball experiment and comeback, snapped and punched Kerr in the face. Most players would have let that fester. Kerr would have been justified in holding a grudge. Jordan could have just ignored it and let his status handle any fallout. Instead, Jordan walked out of practice, went to his car, sat there for 20 minutes to cool down, and then called Kerr to apologize. "I was wrong. That's on me. But you need to understand, I expect excellence from everyone, including myself, especially myself." That's self-control, not the absence of emotion or aggression, but the willingness to own it, master it, redirect it into something constructive. The incident actually strengthened their relationship and made Kerr a better player, because Jordan showed him that true strength isn't about never making mistakes. It's about taking responsibility and learning from them immediately. During the 1996 NBA Finals against the Seattle Supersonics, Gary Payton, one of the best defensive players and trash talkers in the league, made it his mission to get under Jordan's skin. For 4 games, Payton pushed, talked, provoked, and pestered. He tried everything: personal insults, game situation pressure, physical play within the rules, psychological warfare. Jordan's response? He smiled. Not a cocky smile, not a dismissive smile. A genuine, almost appreciative smile. Like Payton was providing him with entertainment during commercial breaks. And then he averaged 27 points in the series while shooting 46% from the field and leading the Bulls to their 4th championship. Years later, when ESPN was doing a documentary and showed Jordan footage of Payton's trash talk, Jordan just laughed and shook his head. "Gary was good, real good, but you can't get to me by talking. You have to play better than me." And Gary was good, but he wasn't that good. He said it with respect, not disrespect. Like a professor discussing a student's well-executed but ultimately unsuccessful thesis. Because when you have true self-control, you don't need to prove yourself through words. You don't need to respond to every challenge or insult or provocation. You let the results speak. And Jordan's results spoke in a language that transcended basketball. 6 championships in 8 years when he played full seasons. 6 finals MVPs, never lost a final series. 5 regular season MVPs. 10 scoring titles, 14 all-star selections, 9 all-defensive team selections. But statistics don't tell the complete story. What made Jordan legendary was his ability to elevate his game precisely when the stakes were highest. Other great players had great regular seasons and struggled in playoffs. Jordan got better in playoffs. Other great players had signature games and inconsistent series. Jordan had signature series. Other great players folded under pressure or got distracted by outside noise. Jordan thrived on pressure and transformed noise into fuel. The famous flu game is just one example. There was also the 1991 Finals switched to his left hand mid-layup against the Lakers, adjusting to defensive pressure in real time during the most important moments. The 1993 Finals, where he averaged 41 points per game against the Phoenix Suns, including 55 points in Game 4. The 1998 Finals Game 6, his last shot as a Bull, where he stole the ball from Karl Malone, drove down court, and hit the championship-clinching jumper over Brian Russell, then walked off the court having delivered on every promise he'd ever made. But perhaps the most telling example of Jordan's self-control came during his first retirement in 1993. His father had been murdered. The media was relentless about his gambling. He was emotionally drained and questioning whether basketball still brought him joy. Another athlete might have held press conferences, written books, given emotional interviews about the struggle. Jordan said almost nothing publicly. He processed his grief privately, made his decision quietly, and announced it with simple dignity. "I have nothing more to prove in basketball." And then he walked away from the game at the absolute peak of his powers. That's self-control at its highest level. knowing when to walk away even when the world is begging you to stay. When he came back in 1995 with the simple statement, "I'm back," he didn't explain himself, didn't justify the decision, didn't seek approval. He just returned and won 3 more championships. Because true self-control isn't about managing emotions or controlling circumstances. It's about mastering yourself so completely that you become unmovable, unshakable, and unstoppable.
You may never play in the NBA. You may never have 20,000 people screaming your name or millions of dollars riding on your performance. But life will test your self-control all the same. You'll face disrespect from people who should support you, rejection from opportunities you deserved, injustice from systems that should be fair, delays when timing is critical, insults when you're already down, temptations when you're trying to improve. And in those moments, you'll be tempted to react emotionally, to let frustration, anger, disappointment, or pride make your decisions for you. But if you do, you give away your power. Napoleon Hill said, "The man who cannot control himself cannot control anything else, not his business, not his relationships, not his future, not his legacy." So here's exactly how to build the kind of mental discipline that Jordan lived by. These aren't just theories or motivational concepts. These are practical, tested strategies that you can implement immediately. Step 1. Create space between stimulus and response. This is the foundation of all self-control. When something provokes you, a rude comment, an unfair situation, a disappointing result, your brain wants to react immediately. Don't. Breathe. Count to 10. Walk away if you need to. Ask yourself, what response would serve my long-term goals best? Jordan didn't react when players trash-talked during games. He collected their words, processed them during timeouts or after games, and then used them as motivation for future encounters. Practice this daily with small irritations, slow traffic, long lines, difficult people. Each time you pause, instead of reacting, you're building the mental muscle you'll need when stakes are higher. Step 2. Use visualization to rehearse composure. Just like athletes practice shots thousands of times, you must practice emotional responses. Spend 10 minutes each day visualizing challenging scenarios, difficult conversations, high-pressure situations, moments when you might be tempted to lose control. See yourself staying calm. See yourself choosing your words carefully. See yourself walking away from fights that don't serve you. Jordan famously visualized every game scenario before it happened. He mentally rehearsed not just his shots, but his reactions to referees' calls, opponents' provocations, and crowd pressure. When those situations occurred in real games, his responses were automatic because he'd already lived through them mentally dozens of times. Step 3. Adopt a personal code of control. Jordan had specific rules he lived by. Let them talk. I'll respond when the game starts. Never let them see you sweat. Results speak louder than ever words could. What's your code? Write it down, make it specific, make it personal. Examples: I don't argue with people who aren't willing to learn. I don't waste energy on things I can't control. I choose my battles based on my goals, not my emotions. When emotions run high, return to your code. Let it guide your decisions instead of letting temporary feelings hijack your judgment. Step 4. Discipline your reactions daily. Life gives you small tests every day. Traffic jams, rude customers, technical problems, delayed flights, disrespectful people. Use those moments to train. Instead of seeing them as inconveniences, see them as opportunities to practice self-control.
Each time you remain calm in a minor situation, you're preparing for major ones. Jordan treated every practice, every regular season game, every interaction as preparation for the finals. The composure that made him legendary in June was built through thousands of smaller moments from October through May. Step 5. Transform emotion into strategic energy. The goal isn't to feel nothing. That's not human, and it's not effective. The goal is to become the master of what you feel. When someone disrespects you, don't suppress the anger. Redirect it into working harder. When you face a setback, don't ignore the disappointment. Use it to fuel your comeback. When you're stressed about an important deadline, don't pretend you're not nervous. Channel that energy into focused preparation. Jordan never buried his competitiveness or his anger. He refined it, sharpened it, turned it into the most precise weapon in sports history. Step 6. Practice the pause, process, proceed method. Before responding to any challenging situation, pause, breathe, buy yourself time. Process. What am I feeling? Why? What outcome do I want? Proceed. What response gives me the best chance of achieving that outcome? This 3-step method transforms you from someone who reacts to someone who responds, from someone who gets triggered to someone who stays strategic. Step 7. Measure success by standards, not emotions. Jordan's standard wasn't, did I feel good about this game? It was, did I do everything possible to help my team win? Your standard shouldn't be, do I feel confident, but am I taking the actions that move me toward my goals? Emotions will fluctuate. Standards remain constant. When you tie your self-worth to your standards rather than your feelings, you become unshakable. Because standards is something you can control, even when circumstances are chaotic. The truth is, building unbreakable self-control isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming strategic with your emotions. It's about using them as data and fuel rather than letting them drive your decisions. Michael Jordan felt everything as intensely at age 35 as he did at age 15. The difference was he had learned to master those feelings instead of being mastered by them. That mastery, that discipline, that unshakable self-control is available to you too. But only if you're willing to train for it as seriously as Jordan trained for basketball.
If you've ever lost control and regretted it, if you've ever said, "they got to me," and felt ashamed, if you've ever felt your emotions hijack your judgment and sabotage your goals, if you've ever wondered what you could accomplish if you were mentally unbreakable, then this is your moment, right now. Not tomorrow, not when things get easier, not when you feel more confident. Now. Michael Jordan wasn't born unshakable. He was born with the same emotional vulnerabilities as everyone else. He cried when he lost. He sulked when he was rejected. He let his feelings control his actions. But he made a decision, a conscious, deliberate decision to master his mind instead of being enslaved by it. He trained for emotional control as seriously as he trained for physical performance. He practiced composure as religiously as he practiced jump shots. He studied self-discipline as intensely as he studied opponents' weaknesses. And that training, that commitment to mental mastery, transformed him from a talented but emotionally fragile teenager into the most mentally dominant athlete in history. Napoleon Hill didn't say self-control was easy. He didn't promise it would happen overnight. He didn't suggest it was a natural gift that some people have and others don't. He said it was essential. He said it was learnable. He said it was the foundation of all extraordinary achievement. Because the man who controls his mind controls his results. The man who masters his emotions masters his performance. The man who disciplines his reactions controls his reality. So here's your challenge, starting right now. The next time someone disrespects you, don't react immediately. Pause, process, choose your response based on your goals, not your emotions. The next time you face a setback, don't let disappointment make your decisions. Use it as fuel. Let it sharpen your focus instead of clouding your judgment. The next time pressure mounts, don't crack. Remember that pressure is just another word for opportunity, and opportunities belong to those who stay composed when everyone else is losing their minds. Train your reaction, master your emotions, control your responses, and become the version of yourself that never flinches. Just like the man who mastered the game by mastering himself, just like Michael Jordan. Your greatness isn't determined by your talent or your circumstances or your natural abilities. It's determined by your self-control. And your self-control is determined by your decision to develop it. Make that decision now. Your legendary future is waiting.
Hit like if this reminded you that silence can be more powerful than any words. Subscribe for more true stories of legendary self-mastery and the principles that create greatness. And remember, today your mission is clear. Train your mind, master your emotions, and become unbreakable. The world needs more people who never flinch, starting with you.